Namaste. Welcome to Chitti Media. This is our current affairs program, and my name is Abhishek Naipathy. Today, we're going to be talking about the tragic 26/11 attacks that happened in Mumbai and the protest that's going to be held outside the Pakistan embassy in the UK. And to cover this program, I have Adit Kothari here with us. Welcome to the show, Adit ji. Namaste.
Thank you, Abhishek ji. Namaste.
I hope you're doing well.
Hope you're well. Yeah,
So last
yeah.
time we had you on the show, you spoke about the BBC protest that you were conducting. So, and now your team is organizing this new protest. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. I mean, the background to this is quite vast, so you'll have to give me some time on this one. I mean, if I was to talk about the background as to why we're doing this, it's predominantly because 26/11 is India's 9/11 moment. We've had terror incidents before that and after that, but the scope of the 26/11 attacks, the way it was carried out, it was just not an attack on Bombay. From my prism of things, it was an attack, our collective conscience. When I say collective conscience, as in the whole of India. And to understand this, one would really have to delve into the background of why this has happened. And for me, it's essentially Islamic terrorism which has been responsible for this kind of reprehensible and absolutely ghastly attacks. I mean, the world has seen this for about the last 20 odd years, but India has been pleading the world to take cognizance of this and, our plight for a very, very long time. When we look at India and its sort of its connections to terrorism and its exposure to terrorism. The problem I have is that we've got a memory of that of a goldfish, and whatever happens to us collectively, we tend to forget. After a couple of years, we mourn about it, we talk about it, and then we easily cover our wounds up. Things have been happening since 1947, if I was to look at it, right from the inception of Pakistan, uh, back in 1947, 22nd of October 1947. It was the Pakistani deep terror state, which essentially sent Afghans and Pashtun tribal men dressed as uh, Kabilis to come and attack Kashmir. And this was a ploy which was essentially designed by the Pakistani government and the intelligence agencies way back on the 20th of August. So that was literally 5 days after independence. So it's we can see that the foundation of in India and its exposure to terrorism has been with its foundation of Pakistan. And how it essentially pans out is it was the Pakistani army which designed this nefarious plan called Operation Gulmarg, where they would essentially use irregulars of the Pakistani army to go into Jammu and Kashmir. They looted, they plundered, they pillaged, they raped women and little girls, and they killed the men, and it was absolutely horrendous. So that sort of arm twisted the Maharaja, then Maharaja Hari Singh, to sign the instrument of accession, and then India gets involved, airlifts its men and sends them into Kashmir to fight the so-called tribal, but actually the irregulars of the Pakistani army, and ultimately Pakistan army comes into the foray, not very late, but in 1948. The plan was essentially hatched by a Pakistani colonel called Colonel Sher Khan, and these are documented part of our history. It's nothing that can be refuted. So the reason why it's imperative for us to remember this war is simply because it's a lesson learned of defeat of deceit and defeat both. I say defeat because a part of Kashmir was essentially lost. Part of Jammu and Kashmir, I beg your pardon, was lost, and that is today what is known as Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, where the people of Jammu and Kashmir, occupied by Pakistan, are still crying for help. They're still crying for humanitarian aid, and all of that is not being covered by the Western media. Now, let's go into where things essentially become a bit interesting. 1971, the Bangladeshi Liberation War happens. It's a humiliating defeat for the Pakistanis, too much to bear. And they conduct an introspective session where it was essentially agreed that in a conventional war, it's nearly impossible to beat India. You cannot defeat them because it's too powerful an army. So they came up with a plan called Operation Topak, spelled as Tupak. Um, it was essentially driven again by the Pakistani intelligence, the ISI, and while they were supplying arms to the northeast India uh, right from the 1950s, the real issue really begins now after the 71 war, where it was strategically clear that they wanted to bleed India with 1,000 cuts. So how would they bleed India with 1,000 cuts? They create problems in Jammu and Kashmir. They create problems in Punjab, which they call essentially they call this a K2 plan. Um, K2 as in Kashmir and Khalistan, and they would essentially create unrest within India, which will trigger some sort of a balkanization, and India will self-implode into various states. They exploited the porous borders on both sides, which is Pakistan and Nepal and Myanmar, and they started training people and creating sleeper cells of Indian militants. And this was the strategy that sort of helped them create insurgencies in Jammu and Kashmir. Um, the rest is history thereafter. I mean, the sleeper cells have caused us so much of pain, so much of grief. 93 bombings, 257 odd people were killed. 03 bombings, 93 killed. Akshardham, 80 people were killed. Samjhauta Express in 2007, about 70 odd people killed. Amarnath, about 110 people killed. So you see where I'm coming from. It's essentially a string of terrorist attacks which we've had to endure. But we forget and forgive too easily without demanding much accountability. And these are some of the attacks that I've read out only so that we can estimate what the overwhelming number of innocents that have lost lives due to Pakistan-sponsored terrorism is. And like I said, 26/11 is essentially our 9/11 moment, and Bombay was essentially a sort of an attack right on our conscience. And this is something which we should never forget and never forgive, because this needs to become uh, a lessons learned for us. And the question is, have we learned a lesson? Probably not, which is why we're doing this protest. We know for a fact the protest is not going to it's not going to change much from a Pakistani side of things. It's not going to suddenly change their hearts and suddenly say that you know what, we're going to give up our non-state actors. All of these Lashkar-e-Jhangvi and Lashkar-e-Taiba, we're just going to dismantle them. It's not going to happen. But it's to raise awareness not only back home in India, but also in Britain, which has suffered 7/7 bombings, for instance. All 7/7 bombers were all of them were Pakistani origin. So that's what we want to ensure, that we never forget, and most importantly, we never forgive Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism.
No, that's an excellent answer. I think it gives us a very good backdrop into how things led to where they are today. But can I ask, what is it that recently inspired you to want to do the protest now? Is there some a series of events recently that got you to want to do the protest now?
There were number of things that have happened. So number one, it's 14 years of the anniversary of the 26/11 attacks, and a lot has changed since. But one thing that has not changed is Pakistan's attitude towards terrorism. A lot of young people have come into the foray, into the domain of politics, into the domain of daily discussions of current affairs, but they've easily forgotten what Pakistan have essentially done to us. So it's important to have these discussions and this kind of discourse to ensure that enough information is being imparted. So that's number one. Number two, Pakistan globally has been using their intelligence quite well, the intelligence agencies. So recently they were running a truck with glow signs where they were essentially uh, sort of pointing out that India has been killing Kashmiris since 1947, and they gave some sort of unreferenced number of 440,000 people have been killed in Jammu and Kashmir by the Indian armed forces. I have no idea where they got these numbers from. I'd love to get the get a hands on deck with those references. Um, so that was essentially what triggered us to ensure that we keep reminding the world that it's Pakistan that needs to be blamed for the Islamic Jihad and the terrorism factory that it set up in its own backyard, and it cannot cry foul about being a victim to terrorism, because if you create a monster, if you build a Frankenstein, it's ultimately your prerogative to deal with it. It's your responsibility to deal with it.
Okay, understood. So now, if so, 2611 is something that's very deeply personal to India and people of Indian descent. So obviously, a lot of us know about it, but then also a lot of us do have like short-term memory. If you can just give a little bit of help us understand what actually happened on that day. What led to those terrorist attacks? Give a little backdrop on that for people who might not know, have any knowledge of it.
Sure, it was ghastly to say the least. 10 Pakistan-based terrorists launched a coordinated shooting and bombing attacks in the heart of India's financial capital, Mumbai, and it was essentially launched at 5 different locations, which in total I think killed about 166 people and injured well over 350 odd people. Uh, some of the key locations that were attacked, which were the Chhatrapati Shivaji bus terminal and the railway station, the Kama Hospital, the Nariman House, and the business residential complex, the Leopold Cafe, the Oberoi Trident Hotel, and one of the most iconic attacks, which we keep seeing pictures floating all over the world, has been the Taj Hotel. In fact, so much so, I recall reading an article posted by uh, one of the intellectuals of India on Washington Post, where she describes the Taj Hotel as an obscene uh, display of wealth, and she almost almost sort of justifies the attack, saying that it should have been taken down. So that's the kind of intelligentsia that we have to deal with in India. Yeah, so it was absolute carnage. 58 people were essentially killed in the railway terminal. Indiscriminate shootings. They launched attacks on taxis, on buses. 15 people died there. The number of people that died in the Taj, in the hotel, in both the hotels, in Leopold Cafe, I think it was 15 again, or 20 people that were killed in Leopold Cafe as well. So it was absolute carnage, and it was the whole financial sector essentially just came to a standstill. And it was just not Bombay that came to a standstill, but the entire country was mourning, because we'd never experienced anything of this proportion and this size. I mean, we've had terror attacks previously. I mean, Bombay was bad enough in '93. Akshardham was bad. Samjhauta Express was extremely bad as well. But this kind of professional and meticulous planning, where the 10 terrorists would essentially come via sea route and launch themselves into 5 different ports and disembark themselves into 5 different ports entering India. They obviously had some sort of local help as well. Um, so yeah, that sort of summarizes the attack that happened, that transpired on the 26th of November 2008.
Thank you for enlightening us on that. So now you mentioned before how 2611 is our 9/11, right? But when it comes to the media and Western media in general, there seems to be a sort of selective memory. Why do you think this is? Why is it that like do we play a part in it too? That we kind of don't remember this. We don't make enough noise about it.
I would say we're as complicit and we're as complacent to be blamed for this as well. I mean, to be honest, a question needs to be asked whether the government of India values the lives of its people. And by the sheer number of killings that have happened over the years, over the best part of the last 50 years, the amount of innocents that have lost life their lives to terrorism, uh, I believe that the answer is no. I don't think we value Indian lives a lot. And had we did, uh, we till date we do not have a full disclosed list of the 141 uh, Indian lives that were lost in the 26/11 attacks. We've got the list of the 15 people. For example, if you were to go on the internet and you type on the internet saying names of the people who died on the 26th of 11, you'll get a list of 15 names, which are the foreign nationals, six of them which are of Israeli descent, few Americans, one British. 141 of them were Indians, and of the list of the Indians who gave their lives in that ghastly attack, we only know the names of the ones who were part of the services and the force. Uh, the common citizens who lost their lives, people like you and me, who were just out dining out with their families, or just going somewhere, from place A to B, people who've lost their lives, there is no recollection of their names. There's not a memorial in India which has a name like the 9/11 memorial in the US, for example. It has the names of all of the people that have lost their lives. We forgot, we've decided to forget our own that have lost lives. So I really wouldn't blame the Western media for having a duplicit attitude on 26/11, where they remember the 9/11 attacks, where they remember the 7/7 bombings, but they meekishly talk about the 26/11. I think the blame is more ours, that we've not gone ahead and made the world aware of what our collective feelings are about this particular incident.
And I think that's actually what leads to this protest, right? That's the problem you're trying to solve. So let's talk about the protest a little bit. So obviously we support peaceful protest, and that's what you're planning on doing. However, there's a lot of people that may say that this is too controversial to do what you're doing. What would you say to that perspective?
I wouldn't say controversial. Can you point me as to why you would say it's controversial? Is it the angle of Hindu and Muslim that you're trying to point out? That
Yeah, that's really what it is. A lot of times it'll create communal tension within India, and it's just people. I don't know if it's some people don't even like protesting, the method of protesting. And they think it's just like you're just creating noise and you're not really doing anything. So, what would you say to that perspective?
I mean, the like I said, the scope of the protest is very articulate. It's about raising awareness in India and globally, and making the world aware of what we've had to endure for the best part of 50 years. The world's only seen terrorism for what, about 20 odd years. We've been suffering this for a very, very long time. When it comes to the controversial aspect, when you talk about ruptures and fractures within our own society, back home in India, where the Muslims or the Indian Muslims would certainly view it in a certain way, I think the time has come for us to dump that political correctness into the bin. Uh, I'm going to go back to 1946. 1946 provincial elections happened in undivided India. Uh, Overwhelming majority of the Indian Muslims of undivided India, I would say about 90% of them voted for the Muslim League. Come 1947, majority of them decide to stay back in India. So essentially, the people who voted for Pakistan, the people who demanded for Pakistan, have stayed back in India, and they still continue to harbor, that the concept of Pakistaniyat. And the reason why I say Pakistaniyat is because to be Pakistan, in my opinion, is the foundations essentially are being anti-Hindu and anti-India. That's where the foundations lie. So if there are Indian Muslims in India who want to worship, uh, you know, heroes who we think are villains. I mean, from my prism of things, Aurangzeb is a villain because of the sheer kind of atrocities that he caused to our civilization. I mean, one has to read about the kind of slave trades that he sort of conspired and executed, the number of temples that he's destroyed. Um, So if people want to worship those kind of heroes, they're most welcome to do that. But I think from our perspective, we've got to call a spade now. We've got to call them out in our society as they're not. They are what I would say are anti nationals, and we shouldn't mince words about them. So in a similar way, if they view this protest for the 26th of 11 that we're conducting as rupturous and could fracture the harmony between the Hindus and the Muslim, the Ganga Jamuna Tehzeeb, as one would say, um, you know, time has come for us to catch the bull by its horn, really, and we shouldn't really take them seriously. We really shouldn't consider them to be Indians, in fact.
Would you say though that even fighting back against terrorism and calling out terrorism actually makes Indian Muslims safer, just as it would make us safer?
I would say so. I mean, it definitely. I mean, the voice for change, the voice for evolution, the voice for ensuring that we can have a discourse within India about the Islamic Jihad, about the terrorism emanating from a pure religious angle. I think that has to come from the Muslim community themselves rather than from the outside. Because the moment it comes from the outside community, tomorrow I'm going to be labeled as an Islamophobe. I've got absolutely no qualms about it, because I don't want to be politically correct. And but yeah, you're quite right. It needs to come from that soul searching questions and answers need to come from within the community themselves rather than from outside.
Okay. So now let's talk about another this protest specifically. Are there specific demands that you have from the Pakistani government?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I mean, the whole reason is, like I said, we know Pakistan is always going to deny it. I mean, for the best part, they decided to deny that Ajmal Kasab was even in fact Pakistani. It was only after Ajmal Kasab came face to face while he was held in the prison. I think it was in 2012 when he came face to face with Abu Jandal, who was one of the Indian Muslims, part of the Lashkar-e Taiba, one of the highest ranking uh, sort of people within the Lashkar-e Taiba, of Indian descent. He was from Maharashtra, from Bir, I think. And when they came face to face, it was very evident that Jindal essentially knew Kasab, and then he confessed that it was he who hatched the plan to make sure that Kasab and the other nine terrorists could have Hindu identities. They were made to look like a retaliation to the Maligaon blasts and the arrest of Sadhu Pragya, that the 2611 was essentially going to be an attack as a retaliation by the so-called Hindu terrorists, and it was essentially labeled as an insider job. Um, so it was only when Abu Jandal and Ajmal Kasab came face to face in 2012, when it was really understood by our intelligence agencies that this man is definitely Pakistani. Um, from a Pakistani side, they tried the best to cover it up. The village where Ajmal Kasab hailed from, that was cordoned off for months. The villagers from that particular village were threatened, and they were told not to reveal the identity of Ajmal Kasab. His family was moved out by the Pakistani authorities. So every step was taken to ensure that the fingers could never be raised towards Pakistan. So with this protest, I don't suppose a lot is going to be changing from a Pakistani side, but at least we will make one more step to ensuring that the world is aware of Pakistan's nefarious designs and their nefarious agenda, um, and how they breed terrorism as part of their daily bread and butter.
Oh, so this is more about just spreading awareness to the world at large. You don't really
Absolutely,
expect much from Pakistan. I understand what you're
absolutely
saying.
not.
So now my next question is why is it important for all Hindus in the UK to take a part in this protest?
Um, so this one's a bit tricky. So I don't know if people will recall, but there was an undersecretary who was working within the Congress regime in 2008, and he wrote a book, and this I'm talking about RVS Money. He was a civil servant, and he wrote a book called Hindu Terror: The Inside Account uh, of Ministry of Home Affairs. And his claims in the book was that the Congress Party leadership was hell-bent over pushing the narrative of Hindu terror at any cost. We all will remember, leaders like Digvijay Singh, who who always mentioned that this was a RSS plot, this was an insider job, and in his book, RVS Money essentially mentions that 2611 was a fixed match between the Congress and the ISI, and these are quotations right from his book up, because I only read it a couple of weeks ago, and he used the word fixed match, and I cannot forget this because it was a compelling argument when I was reading it. But the point is, no one from there on has ever debated this on the merits. He has been saying this for many years, but no one, even from the present dispensation, has come out to debate this. Um, and I think the time has come to question the Congress Party of that particular time as to what their agenda was essentially at that point of time, to paint this as an insider job, or as a RSS conceived attack. Was it to ensure that this could be the final nail on the RSS and the BJP could be locked out permanently? Or was it to paint our entire civilization in a certain way, to say that Islamic jihad is not the only problem, but there is also a Hindu terrorism angle as well? So, which is why I think it's absolutely imperative and important that Hindus get motivated and they learn about incidents like this, and especially what leaders like Digvijay Singh have said. And we make them accountable. We ask them compelling questions as to what would have made them say complete rabid and absolute nonsensical statements like that. And today, Digvijay Singh is continuing with his political life. There's absolutely no bars hold for him. He's still fighting his elections. The Congress Party has not held him up by his collars. The Congress Party is all of those people who try to label this as a Hindutva terror kind of a thing. They're continuing with their political lives as life as normal. So, which is why I think it's important that all of the Hindus come out and raise the bar of this particular discourse.
Do you think that BJP being in power affects the dynamics a little bit? Do you think that gives us a little more, I guess, freedom to express ourselves in this way, or is it? I don't know. How do you feel about that?
No, I don't. I don't think so. In fact, if anything, um, if one was to look at it, we call BJP the right wing. But the only thing that makes them right wing is the fact that the other parties on the other side of the spectrum are extremely left. So that's the only thing right about the BJP. But if you look at the economic policies, it's nothing to do with capitalism. In fact, they've been more socialistic. Even when compared to the Congress, I mean, the kind of free food schemes that they run. If I was to look at the Minority Affairs Ministry, they've launched schemes like Pardes Padhao schemes for Muslim children to go and study abroad, and they get secure unsecured loans worth 20 lakh rupees. I mean, I am part of a minority community as well. I come from the Jain community, and I get absolutely nothing from that particular community if I wanted to go and study abroad. So if anything, the BJP has been more careful, and they've treaded very carefully, and they've been extremely politically correct, probably to please the Western media, even though the Western media is still going to abuse them, irrespective of what they try to do. But I think it's more to please their Western partners as well. We saw how they threw Nupur Sharma under the bus not so long ago, at the behest of who? Qatar. And we see what Qatar is doing today. with the FIFA World Cup and everything. So the short answer to your question is no. I don't think much has changed with the BJP coming into power. They're being as politically correct, and in my opinion, they've ignored their uh, core vote bank.
Okay. So I want to ask another question about the protest. So the last time you did the BBC protest, um, I feel like there was a significantly a older demographic that showed up. Uh, what do you think? How do you think we can get more young Hindus involved? A lot of them may say that I wasn't even alive back then, but what is your message to them?
I mean, exactly why we need to have these conversations and why we need to do these protests is to raise the awareness as to what essentially transpired on 26th of November 2008. The more information we can impart, the more our younger generations can learn about it, they can reflect on it, and they can use it as a learning curve to ensure that we are better prepared and we are more proactive as a society. There are younger leaders and younger sort of organizations coming into the foray. So this particular protest has been organized by an institution called Reach, which is a fairly younger, youthful and very proactive organization. And if you remember 2019, there was an attack at the Indian High Commission in London where Khalistanis and Pakistanis came in threw eggs and tomatoes at a embassy. And Reach was essentially formed at that point. It was a group of young individuals, young professionals who came together and carried mops and cleaning material from their homes to go out and clean the walls of the Indian High Commission in London. Um, which is why younger people need to come out in the open and they need to take charge and they need to take proactive measures to raise awareness about what are pressing issues for our collective society.
Thank you very much for that answer. So now, can we go back to the BBC protest that you had, just so we can kind of look at what worked there and what we can learn going forward with our future protests? So now, did the BBC protest lead to any dialogue between you and leadership of the UK and the Hindu community at all?
No, not at all. I don't believe that the leaders within the Hindu community want to engage. I mean, uh, there are some who are open to open to discussion and open to new ideas, but the majority of them are very regressive to change, and that is what is holding them back, because change is something that they're not very comfortable with. Um, so incidentally, I think more younger blood needs to be infused within these institutions to ensure that we can continuously debate about pressing issues that are impacting us. I mean, one of them is the left liberal intelligentsia in the UK, which has hijacked the UK universities, for example. The social sciences division within the UK universities has peddled so much of hate against India, so much of hate against our civilizational values, and we have done absolutely nothing as a collective community to question them and question their sources. And this is the kind of leadership, this is the kind of direction that we expect from the leadership in the United Kingdom, which we've not got.
So this is where I kind of have a question about when I look at other communities, right? They do. It seems like the youth in those communities are a lot more involved. Like, what do you think we're doing wrong with raising our kids? I don't know if that's the right question, but there's something that we're maybe not doing correctly. Do you have any
Yeah, I mean,
insight on that, or?
Abhishek, you remember the last time, we spoke about the BBC protests, and you touched upon this question remotely, and I said we've got to learn from the Jewish community and the Muslim community. I mean, the way they galvanize, the way they sort of look after the youth, the way they sort of galvanize information, the way they lay down the paths for the young to become leaders. It's absolutely amazing. And we've got to take a leaf from them, and we've got to learn how to be politically more assertive. At this point of time, the Hindu community is extremely divided and is unable to speak in one voice because and I see this remarkable failure with the leadership because they've ensured that we do not have discourses. They've ensured that there is no discussions to be had. Um, so unfortunately, yeah, that is the sad reality.
Now, if you can tell us a little bit about the background of how this protest, how the idea of this protest came about.
Right. This is a very interesting one. So, we're all part of common WhatsApp groups. The Hindus in the UK, Indians in the UK, there are various WhatsApp groups, and nobody was essentially talking about the 26th of November. I mean, I'm talking about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, and it essentially took a Pakistani in exile to pose this particular conversation, and he asked, "Are the Indians essentially planning anything on the 26th of November?" And this Pakistani in exile that I'm talking about used to be an ex-mayor of Karachi city in Pakistan. His name is Arifat Jakia, and he was the one who posed this question and deliberated this question. To which I was one of the first ones, and I said, "I'm going to be with you, even if nobody else turns up. It's just going to be you and me, Arif. And he said while he was going to be part of this, it was essentially going to be under the banner of Reach. So Reach has taken a lot of initiative. They've been extremely proactive in trying to engage with the younger section of our communities, with the student communities, trying to galvanize them, motivate them to join our protest. There's a lot of inhibition from the Indian working class, the Indian immigrants who come into the UK to work because they've got things like visa restrictions, and they've got work commitments, and they've got work issues, which is why they cannot commit to be seen on a protest site. But all in all, ultimately it took a Pakistani to make the 1.4 million strong Indian diaspora in Britain to realize that what we should be doing on the 26th of November. So it's there you go.
Do you have like, if you could say, like, what does that kind of say that it took a Pakistani man to actually, like, come up with the idea to do this protest?
Which is why I keep on raising that we're an extremely reactive community, and we cannot think proactively, and which is one of the reasons why leadership change is absolutely imminent, and it has to happen at some point, because the youth are starting to question the so-called community leaders on a regular basis, and eventually there will be some sort of a stifle between our organizations in the UK.
Okay, so thank you again for your time, obviously. The note I want to end on is tell us a little bit about some details on how people can get involved in the protest, where to show up, when it's taking place, and so let us know about that.
Absolutely. I mean, the protest is being held just outside the Pakistani High Commission on the 26th of November from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And we're going there with our placards to raise more awareness for people in and around the Pakistani High Commission, and with the hope that even the Pakistani High Commission officers will take cognizance of this, and will do a bit of soul searching and maybe a bit of self introspection to comprehend where they've treaded wrong and how they've hurt us continuously. Um, I would implore everybody to follow Reach, the UK handle of Reach, so that you can be completely up to date with how to join the protest, and what the do's and don'ts are. And right after the protest, all of us are essentially traveling to the Indian High Commission, where we go to pay our floral tributes to the ones who've essentially lost their lives on 26th of November 2008.
Thank you very much, Aditji. So on that, we're going to end the note. Thank you very much. Please like, share, comment, and get involved. Namaste.
Thank you.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.